Kurt, great to have you here with us. It's a privilege, as always. And I would say Kurt is centrally located in the heart of the evolving universe, both scientifically and as well as politically, spiritually, in contact with people who are at the edge of new ideas, evolving, moving towards a new evolutionary edge. I think it's nothing less than that. And so it's a pleasure here to have you with us, Kurt, and to consider with you what is happening at the evolutionary edge, so to speak, in terms of group consciousness, in terms of the necessity of the small group as an evolutionary unit that is developing in light of the understanding very much developed by your friend David Sloan Wilson of the fact that working together as groups and as a group, as a foundational unit in evolution, this is something being increasingly appreciated. So I'd like whatever comments you have on that to begin with.
Yeah, Ron, sure. And to everybody here, welcome. Yeah, so we are really excited about this book that we have been putting together with Ron and Victoria and using the Vistar history, a book on this emergence of the understanding of group or collective consciousness, and particularly the skill sets that come with that emergence, because those are going to be the skill sets that are going to be so important for the human future when they can manifest. And what we're going to be doing in this book is taking the 30-year experience of Vistar, which is laid out in their book, and then expanding that to a really grand commentary by practitioners, leaders, thought leaders all around the world about what their experience has been with this emergence of the group consciousness phenomena and the skill sets that go with it. So the first thing I wanted to mention then, because of that, is the number of fields in which this awareness of group consciousness and group skills is emerging. So I think, as you know, it was basically in the spiritual, transformational, self-help, whatever we call it, communities, that the first awareness of this type of interaction started to manifest. And actually, a number of years ago, I wrote an article in Cosmos Journal that really said, hey, people are discovering this everywhere, a new level of creativity, a new level of relationship, and nearly spontaneous creativity together. And this, of course, was during this period that Vistar was doing its nascent work. So what's happened now, as you know, is that current evolutionary biology has recognized that the working group, not only throughout all of biological process, but through human history, has been the small group. And I think you may know the bestseller now, Teeming, Teeming. It's a bestseller now on biomimicry, and it's about how fish and animals, I know you've seen the pictures where the fish all swim together and the birds all swim together, and everything is in that relational field where they have an understanding innately of that relational field and they operate within it. So actually within science itself now, there are a number of programs that are developing, as Ron and Victoria said, based on quite a diversity of psychology on how one can experiment with this emerging understanding and skill set. So it's also really big in the therapy community. Some of you may have seen the program yesterday where they talked about that and how in therapy and in healing, again, this whole understanding of relational field, not only relational field relative to who we are and who everybody is, but what they were also calling deep time, this amazing capacity that only human beings have to project into the future, to remember into the past and develop behaviors around those skill sets. So last thing I want to say in just opening this conversation is that what's interesting and what we're going to try to lay out in this book is that what's in common to this experience wherever it's been experienced. And what we're finding is it exactly parallels what Ron and Victoria laid out in their book. And that is, and I'm sure it's true in your own experience, think about it as I mentioned it. First, you encountered this phenomenon. First, you encountered, wow, there's something going on here at this group level when we get together that's at another level of activity, another level of consciousness. So first you encounter it, and then you explore and express it. You start developing modalities, like the different modalities that Vistar developed in order to cultivate this collective experience in a group together. And of course, as you explore and express that, you then understand that the goal is to actually fully embody that potential and fully manifest that potential. And so last point is that, see, that it will be what's so important to where our species is going. We call it going toward Homo universalis or Homo illuminatus, or metahuman as Deepak Chopra calls it, or the future human as Gene Houston calls it. But whatever our potential is going to be in the future, we're going to have this resonant sense of the group around us. And that's going to be deeply real and deeply creative in the skill sets that it can manifest. If you think just for a minute about a world that would be operating that way, there would be no war, there would be no hunger, there would be no poverty. There would be this immediate sensitivity to the need of the other being that we're sharing this relational field with. So it's super important. We're just so grateful for the 30 years of work that Ron and Victoria put into this. The manuscript that they've sent us is a wonderful template to develop this out in conversation with many other leaders, and that's what we're going to do. So Ron and Victoria, back to you.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you so much. There's so much that you touched on that is part of this group experience. I think we can say, or anyone who's looking at the current scene can point to the current breakdown in communication. And how do you bridge the gap? And when I say bridge the gap, I'm not talking about compromise. We have enough evidence of compromise and how compromise doesn't work. But how do you bridge the gap between what is most internal in a human being and have that as the basis of communication? And that is the vision of collective consciousness. That has been the experience on occasion that we have had in our experience. And we know that this experience of this kind of contact, this kind of direct perception of unity exists, and it exists in other areas. You can find this in a basketball team in the last minute of a game, when everyone suddenly unites in one common purpose, and something happens where the individuals become a functioning whole. And that experience is something that needs to be looked at. That is what has happened to us. The potential of this kind of communication is direct experience again. It's not intellectual, of love, of compassion, of inclusion, of a whole, which becomes an internal part of our consciousness, that whole. So the potential of this kind of group process is enormous. So much so that the question is, in light of the current difficulties in our society, is it an essential next step in the evolutionary process?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is going to be essential because everybody sees what the consequences are if we don't get our act together in this collective. And if the way that we get our act together in the collective is not in that deeper resonance of love and connectedness, that's a really felt real experience.
Yes.
So you're absolutely right. In this work, it's always this natural vacillation between the way this spontaneously arises, which is, as I said, always usually in that beginner's mind, in that fresh space where it can arise spontaneously on its own, but also the fact that all languages have grammar. Every group that we've talked to about this also has explored the modalities that can sustain this experience or cause it to happen again. And what's really interesting is that in this work, you do find that none of the modalities themselves will ever guarantee that that spontaneous, deep, wonderful experience will arise again, but they certainly are the pointers in that direction. So if you get that amazing resonance between the pointers and then that naturalness of beginner's mind, which was in that quotation from Diamond Heart Work, that what we're looking for is there already. So drop into it, however you want to say that in words. But it's going to be that kind of a human being that will exist in the future that really navigates back between third person, which is everything about science, technology, knowledge about, story about, and everything in the first person, which is where recognition and love and resonance, and that goes on. And that if we're skillful, kind of like Elizabeth Sorator says, in playing that keyboard all the way from the far left to the far right, all those keys on the keyboard, we're going to be a species with amazing abilities. And the one that'll be so important, as you just said, is that immediate ability to lean into the need of the other person or being that's sharing that relational field with you, where your empathy and your desire for their well-being is as primary as your sense of that for yourself. And I think where we see that the evidence is that this can be true, it's the message of any part of the Dharma you look at, whether it's Diamond Heart Work or Fourth Way or Advaita, or go through the whole list, they all end up with deep resonant interconnection and what that implies in how we behave. So it's going to be crucial. And the reason I think it has promise, everybody here who's been exhilarated by that experience, raise your hand. And I'm sure all the hands will go up, because when you've had that experience, it's absolutely exhilarating. And that's the co-discovery that we can all have together, which can really help put the species on the right track. So,
yeah, absolutely.
I had to come in here. It's so exciting. It's really beautiful what you're both saying. And I want to say also, in our experience, again, this happened to us. Could not plan something like this. You can't plan it. So what happened was, when people began, the only way I can say it is waking up. Really, there was a sense of being more awake, where our view on our circumstances and the world, the scene is in the world, was shifted, changed. Like there was more understanding about what was going on in a whole way, rather than just a reaction to a part. So what happened is the spontaneity of creativity. It was completely, what's the word? Like it's sort of like, if you get in the water, you're going to get wet. Well, it's like, it just was like, there was no question. It just came out. I mean, Voice Point, a theater ensemble happened. And, as I said before, this is not like we lived in some bliss land, not at all. There were incredible conflicts, I mean, just everything. We had people from all different kind of backgrounds and economic levels and even, races. So, it wasn't going to be a free flow there at all, but there was just this sense of when we would enter, I don't know if I could call it enter, when that space was revealed to us, when we were there, that it didn't matter. It didn't matter. It just didn't matter, It was not like everybody was wonderful and beautiful and nobody annoyed me. No, it was nothing like that. Everybody still had all the same things. Nothing had changed. They didn't become perfect people. It was just the sense of being together was so much fun that even if we had had fights and everything, it healed so many of the more relative issues. Like if you walked in and you were mad at somebody because they didn't call you back the night before, they took your place in something, after the meeting, that would be gone. And you know what? That was true in the Kenneth Mills experience for me. When I went into an unfoldment, which is what we called them, I had, and things were going on in this mind. After I left it, I was not in the same place that I found me. I was in a different place. things did not matter that way anymore. A lot of the situations actually they weren't even relevant. The things to fix, we know what to fix, so we know what to just ignore. Ignore. Half of our problems are problems for ignoring. And so when that creativity came out, it was very childlike. It was very childlike. It was, a theater ensemble. There were a lot of playing around, and we became more professional, as it went on. But it was a very kind of raw experience of being together, and people couldn't wait to get together again. They just couldn't wait to get together again. It was better going to the movies. It was better than going out to a restaurant or a bar. It was just an experience that was really, really fun, fundamentally fun.
Yeah, and what I loved about the structure of your book, just to tell everybody here, is the first thing they did was talk about the experience in general, which is what we've just done. And then we all said, yeah, that's an exhilarating experience. We've all had that. And boy, when that arises, that's magic. But then they laid out all of the ways that it can arise, all of the contexts in which it can arise. And that's what we're also doing in the book. We're building from that. It's kind of like if you said the word flowers, but then you say, okay, then let's go through the list. We got petunias, we got tulips, we got daffodils, and we could talk 10 years about that list. So once that skill set arises in human beings, and once that's cultivated and nurtures, then it's like music. There is no end to the amount of creativity and product that can come from that interaction and that reality. So it's kind of like when you look at the term the diamond heart work, and then you think of all the facets in the diamond, which is why that's such a, and there, of course, there's the title of our program today, all the facets in which that can unfold. So a future like that for humanity would be a wonderful future. So
it's worth exploring. It's worth investigating. It's worth looking at every aspect, how to get there. And at the same time, as we said yesterday, to realize that it's a shortcut to the sacred. It is a sacred experience. We do not understand, and we often make it a word, but it is not a word. It's an experience of contact with consciousness, with a shared fundamental in every human being. So that is something that we do stress in the book too. And everything is aligned to create that atmosphere, the clothing, the decoration, the kind of language we use. So I just want to bring that in on top of its significance. It is a field, and there is a field, as Victoria says, beyond right doing and wrong doing. Let's enter that field together.
Yes, and I was just think so many things are coming up, but to say also that there was a longing for it. I think there's a longing for it.
Well, the best quotation on that is the Sufi one, that longing is love itself. And once you realize that longing is love itself, then you realize, oh my gosh, the power, of this energy. And it's like when you fall in love, or when you love someone deeply on any level, it's like they say, you don't ask for connection. Connection is there. Go back to the Alma's quote. And you can't get rid of connection. That connection will always be there. So you actually are a captive of that group phenomenon anyway. And so what we need to do is get in there and swim and enjoy that and build a world around that. So yeah. Good example of that. And it's tragic. If you looked at the Ukraine-Russia war, on one side of a border, people are killing each other. The minute they cross that border into Poland, people are embracing them, giving them food, giving them a place to sleep. It's just the best of humanity and the worst of humanity, just side by side. And it just shows these are two different worlds depending on how we play that,
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. So are we out of time, Victoria, Kurt and I?
Right on time. We said 4:20 and it's 4:19.
You got it. Look at that. I didn't even look.
Thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful. Thank you so much. I think we were going to go on with poetry, a little poetry from Ron Friedman.
Were we talking about anything else?
No,
I think we were becoming poetic. The more and more you consider these ideas, these feelings join, and the rhythm is innate. It's innate in all of us. I remember a meeting we had many, many years ago, and no one was allowed to speak other than speaking in poetry. And the amazing thing was, it was wonderful. It was beautiful. It just happened. It just happened. So I have only a few minutes, and I'm not going to besiege anybody with a lot of poetry, but just to say that for me, perhaps with my scientific background, I've been called the mystic medic, combining my medical background and the mystic. The process itself of creativity, of being engaged in the instant of the creative moment, is something that I look back on. It is magic. It's absolute magic when creativity happens. And so I had to find some kind of way of approaching, of naming this creative process. I needed a word. So by default, I decided to call it the muse. The muse. It's been used before. And so many of the poems that I wrote are about my contact with the muse, with the creative process, and its qualities, and its beauty, and its rhythm. Maybe I have time to read just one poem. Let's see if what I've got here. Let's see here. All right. This is called Waltz. Late at night, a slight smile on my face, a billet doux just delivered, an invitation to the dance. I hear the music, the beautiful hand outstretched. I accept, and in this starlit ballroom, the swaying is impelled. And surely you know, dear reader, surely you know, there is no in heaven, way in heaven, no, not a chance that I can now refuse, in any way refuse, this divine invitation, this invitation to the dance. So that was in 3/4 time. I hope I delivered it that way. I'm just getting rid of my screen here. So the element of the beauty of this magic is one of the elements, and its mystery. And there's another element I just want to mention. And I think, Kurt, actually, you brought this up into the introduction to my book of poetry. You mentioned this strange obligation to write about that which cannot be spoken of or written. You remember you said it was almost a cliche. This magnificent obsession to write about something that cannot be grasped, it cannot be touched, it cannot be tasted, it cannot be seen. And yet, through thousands upon thousands of years, many of us are obligated in one way or another to write about it, to describe it, to even irreverently worship it, as you find in poems like Hafiz. When you get a poem like, he says, God and I are like two fat people in a small boat. We keep on bumping into each other and bursting out laughing. Now, that kind of love, irreverent love, which cannot be mistaken. And so the poet is instantly forgiven. But that is the magic of this magnificent obsession. And that's really all I really want to say about it at this point.
Well, Victoria, the star behind you is shining brightly. So thank you for the 30 years of work that Vishstar has put into helping bring this really important understanding to the world. So what a pleasure all of us had being here with you today.
Well, Kurt, I could.
Thank you
say a
so
lot
much
about
for,
you.
for the support, incredible support you've always been for us. Thank you.
So let's finish up with some doodling. So do you have that for me, or should I screen share?
Yes, please screen share, Victoria. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.